coming up in today's episode.
He had this great ability to communicate, whether it was dealing with bereaved families, people on a general level, and even when he was a curate, he was a chaplain to the local borstal.
Welcome to the All Things Books Show, hosted by award-winning best-selling mystery author Dawn Brooks. Publishing has changed beyond recognition in recent years. Join Dawn as she interviews authors, narrators, and many more from across the creative community. This inspiring and informative show is for readers and writers.
Hello and welcome to the All Things Book Show. And for this episode, I'm going to be interviewing Ruth Bamforth, I think. Ruth's actually written a book for her father, so for somebody else, or about somebody else. So we'll get her to tell us all about that shortly. Let's bring Ruth in. Hi, Ruth.
Hello. Lovely to see you.
Slides again. Nice to see you too.
Yes.
So just out of interest, we were just talking offline, and you said you're a lawyer in the day job. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm a lawyer. That might sound a little bit dull, but
depends what sort of lawyer.
Yeah, commercial law. So lots of buying and selling of companies.
Yeah.
But in my spare time, I'm a bit of a writer. So whilst I've written stuff, if you like, in my own voice, that's been a little bit on the back burner because of job matters. But I've managed to get a book published, which is based on my late father's work as a priest, and that came out virtually a year ago. Don't Fuss, Love God, Don't Fuss, published by Faith Builder Publishing.
Oh, wow. Okay. So we'll go into your writing in a little while. So what was it that made you want to write was this diaries from your dad?
No. Dad, he died 7 years ago, and he'd been an Anglican priest for 52 years.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, he was very well known as a teacher and preacher. And in fact, for most of his working life, he actually was a teacher. When he was ordained, it was suggested he could probably touch more people in the community rather than just being a parish priest. And I think that was probably true, bearing in mind the number of people who he kept in touch with. But he had this great ability to communicate, whether it was dealing with bereaved families, people on a general level, and even when he was a curate, he was a chaplain to the local borstal. I appreciate that's not a phrase which we use these days, but in the 60s, he was the chaplain to the borstal, and he talked very much about the borstal boys, and he talked their language. So one of them said, "I don't know why you talk about our Father and God our Father. My dad just hits me." And Dad talked to them on a very down-to-earth level and talked about the importance of being in God's gang, as he put it. So he had this great ability to communicate. And it struck me after he died that I had this body of work. He left 350 sermons, which he had written out word for word. I thought, well, if I do nothing, these things just sit in the cupboard. And so what I decided to do was put together a study book for people who either know nothing much about the Christian faith or who are interested in finding out more. And it has chapters like, what is a Christian? How do I pray? What is prayer? What does the Lord's Prayer actually mean? And because they're based on sermons, they're all of a fairly sort of bite-sized chunk. So it's a book you can pick up or put down. And so I have chosen the sermons. I've arranged them. There's been a big editing process because how you might stand and deliver something with levels of personal detail is not necessarily what you want to read.
Yeah, sure.
So I have created a hole, if you like, and I have I wrote a preface and a foreword. So something about Dad's life to put the whole thing in context and show how he, if you like, he practiced what he preached.
Yeah.
And one of the things which has been really interesting about the project, and I think has really showed me how much perseverance has been really important. So, I appreciate that my book is quite specialised. But one of the things is the whole idea of perseverance, because even finding a publisher was difficult. It took me 6 years almost from the time he died to publication. And leaving no stone unturned is something which I've really discovered as important, both as part of the process of getting it published and also the dreadful word promotion. Afterwards, certainly in terms of getting it published. I mean, I was rejected in 10 minutes from sending an email. I was pretty impressed about that.
Yeah. They did
I thought they really tried hard to look at my proposal. But being serious, there was a publisher who showed quite a lot of interest in the book. I think improved it quite a lot. And then decided that they weren't very interested in publishing it after all. So that was quite disappointing, bearing in mind, I was obviously quite excited that there was but I was cheeky enough to say to them, well, who do you suggest I go to? And in fact, they suggested Faith Builder, who turned out to be the ones who published the book. So it's been it's been a very interesting journey, because as I say, I'm a lawyer. It's a totally different world to me. But the level of perseverance, both before and after, has been, quite interesting. Afterwards, trying to get people to show an interest in trying to review the book, because I think maybe this is fairly common. If you're known, it's easy to get in front of people.
Yeah.
If you're not known, how do you do it?
Yeah.
So I think that's been another sort of learning thing, and I'd say a lot of perseverance has gone into that as well.
So how long is this book? Is it short? Is it a big tome?
Oh no, it's quite short. It's 156 pages.
Oh, so quite short. So you've condensed each sermon, right?
Quite short. Each sermon probably is no more than 15 pages. So and the way each chapter is set up. So what is a Christian? You get maybe 5 or 6 different sermons. So you can choose to read a chapter all in one go.
Yeah.
And you can choose to engage with the questions I've put at the end, or you could dip in and out. And I've had people say, I put it down, I pick it up, I open it, I read a bit. So I think it's multi-use, and in putting it together, tried to think about where was a gap in the market, because a lot of religious books are either really basic, or I have to say impenetrable theology, and you can't get past probably the third paragraph on page 3.
Yeah.
So trying to, so fitting this somewhere in the middle. So it's somebody actually who didn't actually know my dad actually said, it's just like having him sit next to you talking to you.
Oh, that's lovely. Yeah.
Which was a great compliment, especially as I say, this person didn't know Dad, but actually it's that level of, I'm telling you about this. I'm not, in a sense, preaching at you. I'm not talking down to you. I'm talking to you.
And did you hear your dad give these sermons over the years? So
Absolutely.
as you were writing, did that help? You put it into words?
Absolutely. I mean, certainly, I could probably read some of them out in the sort of way that he would do it. And that was great, but especially when I began the project after he died was a bit of a challenge, emotionally.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But yeah, I think it from my perspective, it kind of helped to hear the voice because it reminded me what the project was about, and what I was doing in compiling and editing was facilitating what he was trying to say, which I think is quite important.
Yeah, absolutely. And in the preface, then, what do you say in that? Is that just sort of, is that a lengthy preface telling about your dad's career and his life?
There's sort of two bits to it. The first is a preface, which is only about 300 words, and it's actually the story of his death. And really demonstrating how his faith was really there with him until the end.
Yeah.
This, he talked about, there were four of us, my mum, my sister, me and my dad in the room. He kept talking about the five of us. No, Dad, there are four of us. There are five of us, I tell you, the Lord is with us. And I thought it just demonstrated how he felt and how he behaved. Then separately, I wrote a sort of chapter 1, if you like, as an introduction, a very short, biography of Dad, very much picking up on his approach to life, his inquiring mind, his ability to connect with people. Even when he was very ill towards the end of his life and was in hospital, there was an Iraqi doctor, and they sat exchanging words in different languages that they knew. And in fact, this doctor saw my mum was taken into hospital after Dad died, about 2 months after, and this junior doctor happened to have been rotated onto my mum's ward. He not only remembered my dad, but he asked my mum how Dad was. Now, obviously, that was slightly difficult because Mum had to tell him he died.
Yeah.
But I think it's the fact that somebody who Dad had only come into contact with in a hospital setting was remembered by him, had made such an impression. And other junior doctors would visit Dad when he was moved to a different ward. So he had a great impression, even near the end, on the people he met, so as a human being, as well as on people who he came across, both church people and non-church people, during his life, who you might have expected him to, in a way, make a bit more of an impression upon.
And why then did he speak Iraqi?
Well, he didn't. No, he didn't. Their
didn't.
common language was English, but there was words. So they seem to know, each of them know the odd word in Russian or Greek, or anyway, this poor chap was trying to take Dad's blood, and I came across them, and that's what they were doing to sort of smooth the process.
Oh, bless him. Okay, and so you felt not obligated, but you actually felt you wanted to honour your dad in some way by putting these sermons into a book. Which congratulations on finding a publisher for it, because as you say, it is quite niche, and a lot of publishers these days won't touch religious books for some reason or other. But obviously that publisher sounds like Faith Builder, so they sound like that they are. Do they specialize in Christian books or all faith books?
I think it's mainly Christian, but I'm not sure. They may publish other faith books as well.
Okay, and so you went through this lengthy process of putting this book together, editing it, going to various publishers, the wonderful rejections that
Oh yes.
authors are quite familiar with. And how's it gone since publication?
It's gone really well.
Mm.
I've had to throw myself into the whole new world of social media, which has been quite eye-opening because previously I didn't particularly do a lot.
Mm.
I think the key I found, again, I go back to the idea of perseverance
Mm.
because it's finding the opportunities. So pulling every little thread. So I've
Mm.
been lucky enough, I've been interviewed by Andrew Edwards on BBC Radio Leeds
Mm.
um, about Dad and the book. That
Mm.
was in January of this year. And
Mm.
that came about because I happened to see that somebody who I'd known as a child was going to
Mm.
be on Radio Leeds. And so I
Mm.
sent her a little message saying, "Oh, how did you manage that?" Um, and one thing led to another, and several months down the line, and
Mm.
you know, that was able to be set up, which was absolutely
Mm.
fantastic.
Mm.
Um, I had a book launch at Wakefield Cathedral, which was
Mhm.
great. The
Mm.
Bishop of Wakefield endorsed the book, and so I've got an endorsement from him and the Bishop of Selby
Right.
as part of the book.
Mm.
So we had a book launch there, so it was fantastic that they offered me that.
Mm.
But then following the threads of, can I get on this diocesan newsletter? Where
Mm.
else? Who might be
Mm.
interested? Oh,
Mm.
well, can I get it in the local press?
Mm.
So getting it in the local press, and then turned out that the local press is he's sort of affiliated to the Yorkshire Post. So I end up with something on there.
Wow.
Um, and then where do I go from there? So Dad was at Oxford in the 50s. I've had a blog on his college website with the
Mm.
chaplain saying a few words. I think my sort of biggest achievement from a publicity promotion to date was I got a review in the Church Times, which has a
Mm.
circulation of about 20,000.
Mm.
But again, that's turning a negative into a positive.
Mm.
So my husband's a Roman Catholic, and he said to
Mm.
me, he said, "Well, why don't you write to the Catholic Herald?" So I wrote to the Catholic Herald saying, "Would you like to review my book?"
Mm.
And they didn't ignore me. I got
Mm.
a lovely email back saying, "Thank you very much. This is not really one for us, but I would have thought the Church Times would be interested."
Mm.
Um, and it was great. I
Mm.
got in touch with somebody at the Church Times
Mm.
through Twitter. Hadn't had a
Mm.
lot of traction,
Mm.
and then sent the sort of said, "Just wondering if you've decided whether to review my book. I thought
Mm.
you might like to know that this has been said." And another author who reviews a lot of books, Rob
Mm.
Seabrook, he'd reviewed it. So, and you might like to see that there's this review as well.
Mm.
I don't know if it made the difference, but I got an
Mm.
email back saying, "Oh, we'd love to review your book."
Wow.
So, you know, y- you don't quite know what's going on in the
Mm.
heads of these people when you write to them,
No.
but it's how do you use what you've got?
Mm.
And even if somebody says no, is there a way of turning that into a bit of a positive?
Mm. Yeah. And especially as your dad was a person of faith, he would know all about turning negatives into positives
Absolute. No,
throughout his life, I'm sure.
yeah, absolutely.
So tell us a little bit more about your dad's early life. You said he was a good teacher and he was quite well recognised. Did he teach at conferences or
No,
was he quite well known in the?
he was well known in the local, in obviously in his local area. So
Yeah,
he he taught at a comprehensive school,
right.
teaching. Well, he started off teaching RE, but
Mm.
then decided he didn't enjoy that so much, and he was a counsellor apparently to every parent who walked through the door, rather than talking about the child's education.
Mm.
So for the probably the last sort of 20 odd years, 25
Mm.
years, he taught English,
Mm.
study skills, Latin, he was a classics. He did classics at university.
Right.
But he was very involved in setting up community work. So getting the kids involved in what was going on in the local community, whether it was helping old people with gardening or shopping or whatever. And that touched an awful lot of people, both the people from the community service perspective who were being helped, but also the kids who were doing the helping. And I remember when I was qualifying, I took mum and dad to a dinner in London, because I qualified as a barrister, and there was this dinner at my Inn of Court. And dinner was over, and Dad went to collect his coat. And Mum and I were thinking, why is it taking so long? It's a very long time to go to a cloakroom and collect your coat. Anyway, he comes back with a bunch of student lawyers, and one of them Dad had taught him, and he was telling everybody, oh, this is Mr. Bamforth, who taught me all I know about the English language in his Latin classes.
Wow.
And this was just totally out of the blue, because Dad simply wasn't expecting to see him. And it was just so nice, because Dad was willing to give them time to talk to them and share something of himself with him, with other people. And it didn't, it didn't matter whether it was young people or older people. He had the time.
And was he still an Anglican priest at this stage, or?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So he did that throughout his life.
Yes. So every Sunday he would, even if it wasn't his paid job, as it were, but he would usually take some level of service every Sunday, whilst earning his living as a school teacher.
Wow. So he wasn't a paid priest then.
Only for the first few years of his of his working career. So actually, before I was born, he and Mum had parishes in rural Norfolk, in the sort of late 60s, early 70s.
Wow.
Some of those stories, I'm sure, would make a great comedy.
I'm just actually thinking. I mean, there must be. Is it in your head to actually write a full biography about your dad?
I'm not sure if it'd be quite a full biography, but I think quite a lot of what happened, especially in the early days in Norfolk, could make, yes, it would probably be classed as, it would be quite cozy, I think. But I think that could make quite a nice little story, or see, either as, I haven't worked it out yet, whether it would be a series of short stories, or whether it would be, quite how it would pan out. But there are a number of incidents which sometimes appeared in sermons or have become family folklore, which I think would really well would stand the test of time. Let's put it like that. Despite.
And perhaps his time working in the Borstal as well. Were there stories from that?
Yes. Well, there was certainly one where. Well, definitely. I mean, certainly one little incident. He got locked out of the curate's house. Went down to the Borstal, and one of the boys said, because it said, "Sir, what did you do?" Answer. He said, "Well, I wrapped some material around my and I put my hand through the window." "But why did you do that? You could have come and asked us. We would have sorted the lock for you."
We'd have got in no problem.
We'd have got in no problem. Exactly. I'm like, yeah, that's probably part of the problem.
Yes, indeed.
But lots of stories like that, or little incidents in rural Norfolk. I think there's plenty of material to to write maybe quite a nice little comedy thing.
Yeah, I'm sure. So hold the book up again. Let's just give it a whirl. It's called Don't Fuss, Love God, Don't Fuss. And is it by yourself? Is that?
It is by myself, yes.
Your name at the bottom, yeah.
Yes.
So if anybody is watching the video would like to get a copy, I will put a link to it in the notes below. So, what about your writing then, Ruth? So, I mean, obviously you've written this, and it sounds quite amazing. So, you say you write yourself. What sorts of things do you write?
Oh, it's a bit of a mixture. So obviously, take it for granted, I have to write a lot of very boring things for work. But I suppose, like most people, I do have an unpublished novel in the cupboard.
Mm.
It obviously took the back burner because of work-related stuff. But it's a detective novel set in the 1920s, really with the shadow of the First World War hanging over it in terms of, you know, why certain events happened, but in a way prefiguring the Second World War, in the sense that problems happen, you know, issues never get sorted out. So it's quite old. It needs a lot of work doing to it. I did have somebody read it quite a while ago. They weren't sure it should be a detective novel. They thought it could be just a novel, rather than it being within a particular, you know, rather than being a real genre novel. I suppose
there are a lot of ex-lawyers or successful writers, Mark Dawson, L.J. Ross, both self-published authors, but million sellers. They sell over 1 million copies of their books.
I can only dream.
Yeah. But they write well. Actually, Mark Dawson, I think, writes more spy, Lee Childs type stuff, and L.J. Ross writes detective novels, and she was a lawyer in London. I'm not sure they did commercial law, mind. I bet there are lots of crime novels that you could come across in commercial law.
Well, I suppose one of the things that will be quite interesting when I finally dig it out is, you know, I wrote it about 20 years ago.
Right.
But how do I see that now? Because I've had a lot more life experience since then, some of which I think will be quite interesting to weave into some of the ideas of what the novel is going on. So I think I need a little bit more time than what I've got at the moment.
Law is a very busy profession, isn't it?
Well, yes, it is. But I keep going back to the idea of it in the, you know, sitting in the cupboard. And I think, although it's obviously extremely different to the project I've done, the fact I've done one project and have been lucky enough to get it somewhere, and even if, you know, I end up self-publishing something, that's absolutely fine as well. But I think it's actually shown me that you can find the time, even if sometimes that's quite difficult. So I think actually the physical act should be getting it out of the cupboard, because it is actually on paper. I don't have a soft copy of it.
Although I'm a cozy mystery author, and I self-publish, and I do all right, so I wouldn't worry about publishers and such like myself. But I write cozy mysteries, and when you were talking about your dad and his rural Norfolk, in fact, I'm just writing one based in Norfolk. Yours, you could actually go down the cozy mystery route.
Yes.
Using a vicar or a priest, your dad, as a protagonist, or a female priest even. You don't have to base it on your dad's life, but I'm sure, because of all the experience you've had, if you didn't want to go down the crime fiction, the total crime fiction, nice, light-hearted, cozy mysteries with lots of humour would kill two birds with one stone.
I think it would, and as I say, certainly some of the experiences which they had in Norfolk, There's one little story. So they did beating the bounds, where they walked around the bounds of the parish, and it was, part of a service. So you can imagine this long, straggly procession, obviously singing properly together at the front. The further down the line you get, you can imagine
Yeah,
it
I
all
can
gets,
imagine.
yeah. And so my mum's at the back with her friend, and there was a little old lady who always wore hats with lots of sort of frou-frou decoration on. And she went under a branch of the tree and the hat got left behind. And there she was singing away, and she was totally oblivious. And I feel, these little anecdotes,
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's working out shape to put them, how to
Mm,
use them.
mm,
But I think
mm,
I think it would be nice to write something light-hearted about it.
absolutely. Be it biographical or fiction,
Yeah.
using some of those examples. I mean, in my previous life, I was a nurse for nearly 40 years, so I bring medicine and stuff into
Mm,
actually my biggest series is a cruise ship mystery series, and
yes.
there's a nurse on board the cruise ship, and I bring lots of the medical stuff, and you can bring all sorts of comical situations that happened years ago in a hospital onto into a fictional novel, right? Which is contemporary.
Mm,
So I mean, obviously, you have to update the information, etc.
yeah.
But yeah, I look forward to reading your work in the future when you decide which route you're going to
Yeah.
go down. I'll be happy
Thank you.
to read a review copy
Thank you.
once you're ready. Um, so I'm just trying to think. I think that's probably all we've got time for, Ruth. But that was a really interesting insight into the life of your dad. What was his name?
Stuart Bamforth.
Stuart.
Yes.
Yeah, great hearing about his life, and I think I'll pick a copy of the book up. Why not? And I will put
Thank
the
you.
link to it in the notes below. Is it available in ebook as well,
It is, yes.
and audiobook?
Not audiobook, it's
Not audio.
ebook and soft copy.
Mm, okay, so really, he sounds like he was an incredible influence and quite a personality, I should think.
Oh, yes, I'm very biased, but yes, he was indeed.
Yeah. So it's been lovely talking to you. And obviously, I look forward to reading your fiction work as well.
Thank you.
Uh,
Thank you. It's
and
lovely.
I hope you get out of commercial law at some stage.
I will do my best.
although, although I'm sure it's absolutely fascinating job.
Very different to writing books, let's put it that way.
Thanks for joining me, Ruth.
No, it's my pleasure. Thank you very much.
So that was Ruth Bamforth with a very interesting insight into her father's life. And if you're somebody who would be interested in reading a book of what sounds like interesting sermons and sermons that you can relate to, and are interested in the Christian faith, or even just interested in learning a bit more about Stuart, then you can pick a copy of the book up. I'll put the link below. And thanks for joining me. That's all for this episode of the All Things Book Show. If you've enjoyed it, please like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next episode. Thanks for watching.